You ever come home from a trip so relaxed you barely recognize yourself only to pull into your own driveway and feel like you accidentally drove onto the set of some deranged HGTV fever dream? Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. 4 days away, just four, and I come back to find my quiet lakefront retreat has morphed into an HOA playground. I'm talking 101 pastel matchbox houses crammed onto my land, a giant metal gate with "Welcome to Lakeside Gardens" bolted right to my old cedar tree, neighbors barbecuing on the dock I built with my own two hands, and a woman I'd never met standing there with a clipboard telling me I had 30 days to comply or get out. You can't make this stuff up, though. I wish someone had, because living through it was straight out of a suburban horror movie. Name's Nate. I'm 35, run a little documentary studio, been working my tail off for a decade so I could build something quiet on this lake. That place was my reward, my escape, Somewhere I could come back from a shoot in Hawaii or Peru or wherever and just breathe for once. But apparently all it takes is one missed email and a plane ticket to paradise for your property to become the neighborhood's new improvement project. Picture this: you roll up expecting weeds and silence, but you're greeted by a pastel parade, tiny houses, perfect mailboxes, street lamps that actually work, even a mini vet clinic with a painted red cross. Cameras blink at you from every angle, and everything's so perfect it's actually creepy. Like those model villages tourists post about online, but with the soul ripped out. The sidewalks are real concrete, the electrical grid's wired up underground, and there are official-looking no trespassing signs posted everywhere, except they're keeping me, the owner, out. Someone spent big money and months of planning not just on construction, but making it all seem legal. Standing there staring at all this, it hit me: this wasn't some mix-up. This was a takeover. I hadn't lost my mind. Someone else was trying to rewrite reality, and they had the audacity to look me in the eye and tell me I was the problem. The woman in charge, Brenda, maybe mid-50s, hair that never moves, the kind of smile you see at church bake sales and dental conventions. She doesn't even introduce herself. She just points at my truck and says, "You'll need to move that by noon. You're blocking HOA-maintained access on my land," with a straight face. Let me back up a sec. Brenda lived in a house so beige it should have come with a warning label for the colorblind. She invited me in like she was expecting me, offered me coffee from some machine that looked more expensive than my car, and then sat across from me with her hands folded, radiating that energy people use when they want you to think they care, but really they just want you to agree. She listened to my objections about how this was my land, how I'd never signed anything. And then she produced a stack of documents, all official, with signatures and legalese, and even a check for $100. $100. For what rent on my own backyard. I pushed it back to her and told her 48 hours. Then I'm calling my lawyer and the cops. That's when the mask slipped. Her voice stayed sweet, but suddenly there was a cold edge to it. She warned me not directly, just a suggestion. Fighting the community gets expensive. And sometimes people who stand in the way of progress find out just how difficult that can be. I left her house feeling like I'd been mugged by a kindergarten teacher, and not sure if the bruise was on my ego or my future bank account. Of course, nothing got removed in 48 hours. Instead, I got a fine $500 for landscaping violations with my name signed in handwriting I hadn't used since high school. That's when it really sank in. This was no prank. This was a siege. They'd weaponized paperwork, social pressure, and now apparently forgery. I was the enemy for wanting my land back. The next day, there's an emergency HOA meeting. It was like walking into a courtroom where everyone had already decided I was guilty. Brenda runs the show, calling me an obstructionist, waving around petitions signed by half the neighborhood, including some people I'd never met. When I asked to see the signatures, she said that's confidential board members only. The more frustrated I got, the calmer she looked. It was like a magic trick. My anger just made her seem more reasonable to the crowd. Then something I didn't expect happened. George, my neighbor, a retired accountant, the only person I actually trusted, was nowhere to be found at the meeting. But later, he slid into my car, closed the door, and told me point blank, that's not my signature. I never agreed to any of this, and neither did half the people on that list. He told me about other neighbors who'd been bullied into submission, like the family on Maple Street, who vanished after Brenda hit them with fines and mortgage headaches until they just packed up and left. This wasn't about community spirit. This was about control, and Brenda had been perfecting her playbook for years. I'll be real, I almost walked away. There were days where I stared at my phone ready to call a property lawyer, then hung up because I just didn't know if I had the fight in me. I'd spent my career documenting corruption and abuse, but being the target of it, it's different. It gets under your skin in a way you don't really understand until you live it. That's when Sarah entered the picture, my attorney friend of a friend whose office looked like a tornado hit a library. She took one look at my stack of documents, laughed, and told me what I was dealing with wasn't just harassment, it was organized extortion. She pointed out loopholes, legal traps, and then together we found the HOA's own newsletter online. Brenda was actually crowdfunding improvements to my property, soliciting donations from across the state, claiming it was for the greater good, all while I footed the bill and lost my rights. Fraud, plain and simple. The plan was simple. Go to the summer festival Brenda was hosting on my land, document everything, and let her incriminate herself. We set up cameras, went undercover as concerned community members, and waited for Brenda to brag. She did right on schedule, thanking donors, promising new features outright, admitting to using the money to expand onto private property. All of it recorded, every word. Then Frank, her husband, corners me and drops a classic line, something like, "People who cause trouble here tend to find it follows them home." He showed me phone footage of me walking around my own land, edited to look suspicious. Basically, he was telling me back off or we'll ruin you. I called Sarah as soon as I left. She was all business, said Frank's threat pushed things from civil to criminal. Now we had intimidation and conspiracy and enough evidence for a legal nuke. In the next 2 weeks, Sarah was everywhere: county records, attorney general's office, even the IRS. We filed paperwork proving I'd owned the land since before the HOA even existed, dug up the original deeds, the survey markers, everything. Here's where it gets good under state law. If someone dumps property on your land and ignores removal notices, that stuff becomes yours. Brenda had donated a whole pastel village to me by refusing to clean it up. Sarah had me register the whole thing as an art installation portrait of suburban tyranny, valued at $25,000, set for auction with proceeds going to a legal fund for HOA abuse victims. The showdown came at Brenda's next crisis meeting. The community center was packed. Brenda started out strong, but I stood up with my folder of evidence, read, "The law explained how everything built on my land was now legally mine, and how every dollar raised for the community was fraud." I announced the art auction, and you could feel the room change. Gasps, murmurs, cameras flashing. Then the dam broke. Neighbors started standing up, telling stories of intimidation, fake fines, forced modifications, even forged signatures on HOA paperwork. The hardware store lady revealed Frank had been charging private expenses to the HOA account for years. The board voted Brenda and Frank out on the spot. George was made interim president. New rules were passed. Fines capped voting, transparent appeals process for every decision. The auction raised $25,000, which we used to set up a defense fund for other HOA victims. Brenda and Frank charged with fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy. The pastel houses were finally hauled away, and for the first time in a year, I sat on my own dock and listened to real silence. Funny thing, peace isn't the same after a battle like that. It's heavier somehow. But I'd do it again, not just for me, but so nobody else gets steamrolled by a suburban emperor in a beige house with a sweet smile and a mean streak. The lesson: sometimes the best revenge is sunlight and paperwork. You ever fight an HOA and live to tell the tale? Drop your story in the comments, I want to know. And hey, if you like mayhem, there's more where this came from. Choose your next rabbit hole wisely.